Nurses witness everything in a hospital, but some things are kept from patients for a reason. Here are 10 hospital secrets nurses don't tell you. Sickest patients get treated first. Triage. Before you head over to your local healthcare facility, especially if you aren't that ill, there is something you must know. As bad as you might feel, hospitals don't work on a first-come, first-served basis. Sorry to burst your bubble, guys, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. When we looked into it, we found that nurses in triage make sure they assess the vital signs of all the people who walk into their doors. This helps them point out who is most in danger when it comes to health. Once this is established, those who have more serious problems are pushed to the front of the line. So next time someone comes in after you, get attended to before you. Don't have a bad attitude. Just know that this is how triage works. Night shifts bring the strangest cases. Nurses will tell you that the strangest things crawl into their treatment centers once the sun goes down. This must be a strenuous experience of sorts, especially as there are fewer staff and doctors on call at the later times of the day. Despite this, hospitals and the nurses working in them know to expect people with the strangest afflictions during the night. We are talking about people suffering from psychiatric crises, overdoses, car accidents, and the likes. This is such a burden to the nurses that it seems to have affected their health over time. There is even a US study which shows that working a rotating night shift can be linked to chronic diseases such as cardiovascular issues. Food for thought, wondering why their family members or friends who are nurses hate the night shift so much. Nurses often notice problems before doctors. This doesn't really come, and a surprise does it. Nurses simply have the chance to observe things more than the doctors. They are there by the patient's bedside, they monitor the charts, and they take part in other activities that help them notice subtle changes in the patient. Thanks to their training, nurses are able to use critical thinking, judgment, and continuous assessment so that they can catch all the signs needed to ensure the health of their patient is stable. So sure, the doctors may have access to reports, labs, Imagine, and other sorts of data, but the nurses are right there in the trenches, witnessing all the changes in the patient before their health gets worse. Many ER visits aren't true emergencies. This must be a bit of an annoying aspect of the job, but nurses know that although there are a large number of people that visit the emergency room, there aren't a lot of them who need to be there. They just aren't facing any life threat if ailments that warrants the attendance of a doctor in the emergency room. In fact, you'd find that most of the time, a lot of these patients are suffering from anything between a mild fever or a minor sprain. We aren't highlighting this because the nurses and the doctors are annoyed about this. Far from it. The reason it's actually an issue is that these lesser health problems have a way of clogging up the system. Now, those who really need help from the medical staff have to wait for ages before they get any help. Sure, triage helps to deal with this to a certain degree, but there is a limit to how much this helps the nurses. As such, maybe you should think it through before you head to the emergency room. It might not be that much of an emergency after all. Saying quiet is believed to cause chaos. Like those who stopped cleaning their rooms because they were told to clean the same room while they were in there, saying quiet in a quiet ward is just not a good idea. The superstition believes that once you utter the words, "it is so quiet," or once you utter anything similar, you invite chaos into a once peaceful ward. All of a sudden, an influx of patients will make sure the hospital isn't so quieter anymore. As wild as this sound is, there isn't a mere superstition. Some nurses scold others for tempting fate by noticing how quiet it is. Best just hope and pray it stays quiet instead. Just don't do so out loud. Nurses notice more about you than you think. A bit creepy when you think about it, but that's just a side effect of observing their patients for a period of time. So sure, they are making sure they are dealing with your medical problem. However, they are also noticing certain things about you. Things such as your hygiene, how well you groom yourself, how disoriented you may be, and so on. This may seem redundant, but this is important because many medical issues show themselves in our appearance or our behavior. As such, when people are experiencing things such as dehydration, confusion, or malnutrition, the nurse always seems to be the first to notice these things. This just tells us how much they care about us and how they want us to be healthy. Always get a nurse with a keen eye. It could very well save your life. Hospitals speak in codes most patients don't understand. Ever notice that some strange announcements ring out when you are in a hospital? We're talking about announcements such as code blue, code red, code orange, or rapid response. This ain't your imagination going wild as though you were some soldier in Vietnam. These are actually emergencies that are used to communicate emergencies or events with stirring up disorder in the patients. For example, we've learned that code blue usually means that someone is having a cardiac arrest. That's grim, but not as grim as code red, which means that there is a fire. With that in mind, we must note that the codes may vary from one hospital to another. That said, it's probably best not to worry about it. Nurses protect patients from overworked doctors. As alarming as this may sound, we must remember that doctors are humans too. Maybe until AI can actually work on humans like physicians, we will just have to deal with our human doctors. We need to highlight that they are human beings, because just like the rest of us, they get tired, frustrated, or overwhelmed. With that in mind, we are happy to find that nurses often act as the go-between when it comes to doctors and their patients. They help the doctors by giving them reminders. They make sure things are up to par by double-checking orders or catching potential errors. Truth be told, this role takes a lot more than one may think. For example, you may find that nurse may spot that a prescribed dose may be too much for a patient to handle, or that this dose may trigger the patient's allergies. Thanks to these nurses, we find that such problems are corrected before much damage is done to the patient. The funny thing is, unless you watch a video like this, you may not know that this is what nurses have to do to make sure that the patient is safe. Makes you appreciate nurses a lot more, doesn't it? Some tests are ordered more for liability than for necessity. Defensive medicine. As we mentioned earlier, these doctors are just humans. With that in mind, we find that these doctors and their hospitals are experiencing a lot of pressure when it comes to it. As such, it is no surprise that there are fears of legal risks and the consequences of regulatory oversight. As a result, we find that some tests that you take in the hospital aren't necessarily for your own good, but for the good of the doctor. This is because they need to make sure they cover themselves properly, just in case they get sued or because of hospital policy. This precaution is referred to as defensive medicine, and it involves anything from lab panels to imaging. The main thing is that such procedures are done to protect the doctors and the hospital from expensive lawsuits and the damage to their reputations. Nurses also know what is going on when they are asked to do repeated labs just in case. Cold world, but that seems to be the way it is. Nurses, not doctors, keep hospitals running. This seems to be the best-kept secret in the medical industry. Suffice it to say, nurses seem to be the ones that do all the running around in a hospital. Sure, the doctors make diagnoses and perform surgeries on their patients, but it's the nurses that make sure that the hospital's day-to-day operations run smoothly. They are the ones who constantly monitor the patients. They are the ones that administer all the medications on said patients. They are the ones who coordinate care across a shifta, and they are the ones that manage the next emergencies until the next escalation. With that in mind, it is clear that without nurses, hospitals just can't function. Thanks to the nurses and their secrets, these hospitals just might keep us well and healthy for a long time to come. So next time you step into a hospital, remember, there's far more happening behind the scenes than you'll ever see. And this is just the beginning. Because if you think these secrets are surprising, wait until you see the next video. If this opens your eyes, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss the hidden stories of the ER, ICU, surgery, and beyond. And if you know a nurse, thank them. They carry more secrets and more responsibility than most of us will ever understand.